Christine, good to see you again. Everyone, if you use podcast guesting to grow your business, hopefully you are. If you're not, hopefully after like the last 2 days, you're seeing why you should. And we intend to keep reminding you why this is we believe it's the number one way to get high ticket clients. So how many of you here today? How many of you here today watching? Maybe you've tried podcast guesting before. I mean, I can raise my hand on this, Christine. I'm sure you and some of your clients as well, right, have felt like I'm doing all these podcasts, but I'm not getting an ROI from it. It just doesn't work for me. It's not the right way for me to get clients. So how many of you have experienced that? Let's talk about how we can change that belief today, Christine. So do you see that quite often with people that you speak with, that end up either don't join your program, do join your program when you do all these amazing events? Christine spoke at Podfest last year. So do you see this come up quite often, that it's a struggle for people to really get an ROI from podcast guesting?
100%. I think that's more often the case than it is not. And I think that, we talk to people every single week who are like, well, I've been on a podcast and I didn't get anything from it. I've been on a dozen. I've been on 50 and maybe even more. And I don't want to believe this is true, but I've thrown in the towel because I just don't think it's the right strategy for me because it hasn't worked yet.
Wow. And I'm sure most people, I know I see this quite often too. And many of you that are watching this, you're coaches, you're consultants, you're experts, you work with people, you help them get a result. How often do we see that people tend to think that it's their fault when it's generally not their fault? They just don't have a system that's been proven to work again and again and again, like the system that you provide, and the podcast guest for profit blueprint that we're going to actually be sharing with everybody at an upcoming workshop. More on that coming in a minute. But do you tend to get that where people just sort of beat themselves up and think, oh, it must be me, I just don't know how to do this?
100%. And I can relate because I felt that way about a lot of things before. Like we make ourselves wrong when we don't have the strategy, the tactics, the approach, the mindset, all of it that come together to be in alignment with who we are, right? So either like something about it feels off, it doesn't feel congruent, and or maybe we just have been throwing stuff at the wall, trying things. And I would say at least 95% of people with podcast guesting, that's the case. Like 95% of people do not have a specific strategy. And even of the 5% that do, a lot of times it's one that they might not know it, but across thousands of data points, like it might be one that doesn't actually work that well.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious now, as you sort of went from not getting an ROI to getting an ROI, sort of a little bit behind, maybe just a little, I don't know, don't go too deep, but just a little bit of behind how you discovered this system. Did you start actually using this system first before you started sharing it with others? And what does that look like? What did that discovery look like?
Yeah. So essentially, I built the system out of what intuitively made sense for me, or what was intuitively downloaded, or whatever you want to say, however you want to describe it. What it was for me was a real, it combined all of my skill sets that I had brought into business at that point, being a connector, being in the media for so long, being somebody who enjoyed connecting deeply, and also speaking, right, and expressing and teaching, and this was 7 years ago. So podcast. I think a huge part of this not seeing an ROI from podcast guesting for me back then, and for people now, is like we simply just don't know enough about this stage yet, most of us. Like, it's not our fault that we're trying a thing that hasn't worked. Like, think about the difference between going on this particular type of stage, which did not exist 20 years ago, straight up didn't exist, versus like oration, public speaking, which has been around for thousands of years, versus like less than 20, right? And you might say they're the same. They're really not. So when I got into this, a lot of it was beginning to like study something there wasn't much research on and create something new, which some of it we can reference the past, and some of it was being created, like everything with entrepreneurship, right? Building the plane as it flies. And so I made a ton of mistakes, and then had the data to track across dozens and hundreds and thousands of pitches between what we've done for myself and what we've done for clients now, to really be able to see. I'm like an intuitive person, right? So I am very intuitive, and I'm creative. And so I'm lucky enough to have people around me who've been able to help me organize all of these data points over the last 6 years and go, all right, how does what we think work? Is that actually backed up with the data? And for us to be able to say 80% acceptance rate versus industry average of 2, or like, here's how we know we've made over $1 million with our appearances. Here's what we know the pitch works and what doesn't. And because we tested it all now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love it. Isn't that nice? I feel you on that too, because sometimes it's hard to develop a system for those of, I'm sure those of you watching this too, many of you are the creative entrepreneur, the creative owner of your business, and you have all these amazing
People
ideas.
Person, right?
You need the operator to come in and say, we're looking at all the data. We're seeing that this happened when you did this, and when you kept doing it, it kept happening. And then this happened, and then this and this, and all those success points. And then you transferred those to your clients who've worked with you. Do you mind sharing? You don't have to share any names, but maybe 1 or 2 success stories of what people have experienced when they came to you sort of down and out, feeling like, gosh, this just isn't working anymore. I don't know if I want to keep doing podcast guesting, to working with you a little bit, jumping into your system, and then what happened on the other side, some of the success stories, because I know some inspiration is always good for all of us.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I think it's kind of that one example that comes to mind that just actually happened today. It was like, when we had some clients that were going through this overwhelm of like, they'd had some success serving some clients in their niche. And they came to us going like, look, we could guest blog. We could run some ads. We could keep updating our website endlessly, right? None of that is exciting us. We want to connect. We want to connect with the people we can help. We want to inspire people. We want to spread our message, but we're not quite sure if that's going to be enough to help us to land more clients that we really love working with. And just got back like their first big acceptance from their recording in September. Just today got accepted to a big podcast in their niche from one of their very first pitches. And it's like, oh my gosh, this works. It took a while to, to be willing to believe it. But the minute that they sent the pitch, then it was just a matter of like waiting a few days for it to hit the right inbox and get a yes back. And
nice.
And then we have another client who had just like, she'd paused her podcast. She had totally pivoted to growing her business through ads, and also was getting like some people who were kind of trolling her that had come in from ads because they were cold. They had no relationship. And, we're sensitive people. We want people to like us. We want to provide a good experience. That's really distracting when you get trolls and, can throw you off course. And we went, look, what's the truth here? The truth is that you have something amazing to offer, and you are great at delivering it. It might just be that we need to tweak a couple of things about where you're showing up, how you're showing up, and what you offer, when you show up, so that you can create what you want. And she was able to create a JV partnership, which got something like a really, really exceptionally high show up rate for her free webinar. And then out of that high show up rate, I think it was like 20% of the people on that JV webinar where they met her converted to paying clients at the end.
Nice.
Like that. From the power of having connected and leveraged a relationship through a podcast appearance.
I love it. I love it. So, and that's, speaking of that, and we want to dive in because I know we promised we were going to give people some ways to monetize their show. And that's a different way, right? That's something that's a little different than what some people think of, right? We've talked about how this is really like in my space, and what I often taught, what I still teach, and it's generally more just sending people to book high ticket clients, right? Which is awesome, and that's a huge part of your program and the podcast Guest for Profit Blueprint. But there's other ways to do it. You just mentioned one, right? JV partnerships is another way. And before you share, let's share like 2 or 3 of these, and then we'll tell everybody how they can get all of them while we're on here. But I spoke to somebody recently, and it sort of blew my mind because it goes into this sort of proof of concept of how guesting on podcasts can be the authentic way that you can actually, and even your only way to grow your business. Because I met someone who had built a multi-million-dollar mastermind, had never done a single bit of marketing except for podcast guesting. And the only difference that I would state here is that when we had this discussion, he was sort of like, he's a little older than I am. And he's like, I didn't really know anything except for I came from the world of radio advertising. So it seemed like it was a good fit, but he did like multiple interviews every single day for like over a year to grow that kind of business. Now, what I want people to think of is that what Christine's way, her system teaches you is you could probably, if he would have met you, I can imagine he would have been able to pick 3, 4, 5, 6 of these really big shows and probably gotten to that result so much faster and easier with so little effort. Then imagine what his business would look like now. Instead of 2 million a year, it probably would have been 4, 6, maybe even 8 figures. You never know, because it's not just about doing the episode or doing the interviews. It's about the quality. It's about the size of the audience. It's about the audience being engaged, the right audience. And that's what you really help people with. So I wanted to share that because I wanted people to just sort of have a big vision too, that this is something that you can do. You can do it yourself and you can figure it out, and you can take the long, hard road, or you could take the shortcut and do like Christine's clients and get the big results with less work. So with that being said, Christine, 20 ways to monetize your podcast. We've only got like a minute and a half left, so we're not going to be able to get all 20. So maybe you did JV, so maybe like 2 or 3 others that maybe people don't even think of, that because you blew my mind earlier about the repurposing of the content 50 different ways. So give us some sort of sneaky things that we don't even know, we don't think about.
Yeah. So one thing that I think most entrepreneurs miss is the sort of the middle of the funnel. Like we focus a lot on leads and we focus a lot on conversions, people who are ready to buy, and we don't focus on what it takes to take them from being introduced to you to being ready to invest high ticket. And there are people in your audience right now, I guarantee it, that when they hear the right podcast interview from you, will have the aha moment that now they're ready to buy. They're already in your world. You don't have to go chase down or feel like you need to find new people who are willing to invest in your services. They're already there. And with strategically positioning a podcast episode in front of them, meeting them where they are, that can be the one touch they need to warm them up to whatever it is. Apply to book a call with you, ask for that checkout payment link, and create the commitment to change the way that you can help them, because they heard what they needed to hear from you in that interview.
Nice. Well, what are a couple of other ways that that somebody could do that they're not even thinking of?
Yeah. Okay. So this can be, you can also use this to create dream relationships and strategic affiliate referral partnerships. I'm talking about different than JV with your favorite influencers. Because when you show up differently on a podcast, it's going to open doors and opportunities and rooms for you that you don't have access to otherwise. So the question is there somebody that you've been following? Man, I'd love to collaborate with them somehow. Man, our stuff is complementary. Wow, it would be great to have a picture with them, have an ad scene on, right? These things that can really, really attract clients because you borrow the know, like, and trust there. It's not just about getting in front of their audience. It's about actually forming a relationship. And you can do that in that way, with one powerful conversation.
I love it. So what else? One more, and then we've gone a little bit over. How about one more goodie, and then we'll tell people how they can get all 20.
Okay. So if you've ever written a book, or you have written a chapter in a collaborative book, this is a great way to activate and sell or reactivate your intellectual property and spread your message, right? Because there is 80% of people who listen to podcasts listen with an intent to purchase something that has been recommended by the host. And guess what? You and your book have been recommended by the host by virtue of you going on that podcast.
I love that. And if you can see behind me there, I would say probably 75 to 80% of those books were purchased from hearing a podcast and hearing the author on a podcast. And I'm not making that up, folks. This is something that we laugh about all the time. I'll show stacks of books that have come in. And here's something really cool for those of you that, if you're using your book, think about it. If it's top of funnel and bringing people in, getting them know, like, and trust, and then you have some bonuses or you have a way to move them to the next step. I heard today, perfect timing, I was listening to a really successful coach talking about his book just passively brings in like $30K a month for his business. And he does a lot of podcast interviews, but he's got his book on the front end. So the podcast sort of builds that know, like, and trust. Then the book deepens the connection. And then as long as you have the next steps, which I'm sure Christine, when they talk a lot about offers and stuff in your programs, can help with as well. But how can they get all 20 ways to monetize their podcast interview?
So good. You can grab a VIP ticket to podcastguestforprofit.com. Podcast Guest for Profit Live is happening August 1st. That's Tuesday. And when you grab your VIP ticket, you also get access to our 20 ways to monetize a single podcast interview. And these aren't just like, oh, these would be cool ideas. These are ones that our clients have told us, yes, here are the numbers. Here's exactly how much money I made in each of these different ways.
Yeah. I think you had like people swarming you at PodFest to get a hold of this thing too as well. So, so for those of you who want to get your hands on all 20 ways, and you want to start building your own podcast Guest for Profit blueprint along with Christine and myself, definitely go to podcastguestforprofit.com, grab your VIP ticket so you can get an extra hour in the room, along with a couple other bonuses that you'll see there. But that extra hour, imagine, I don't even know, I haven't ever asked Christine, but working with her one-on-one for an hour, I'm sure is much more, the investment is going to take more out of your pocket than just the VIP ticket, which is next to nothing. But you get to come in and you get to ask questions and get some one-on-one coaching from Christine in that VIP time. So come join us. 5 days away. That's what the big hand signal was. Sorry, Christine used to be in media and broadcasting. She's probably like, "What is this signal? Is it 5 minutes
Wrap
left?"
it up.
But no, 5 days away to Podcast Guests for Profit live. So come join us, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks again, Christine, and we'll see you tomorrow with some more goodies to help get you going and get you moving forward to getting a bigger ROI from your podcast guest appearances.